everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Dr. Care's webinar on Practice Billing Series for Dummies. We are excited to be here with you today for the next 30 minutes or so to step through this second session in the series on rejected billings and reconciliation, how to compare and contrast how your rejected billings module from our Practice Care program stacks up to the error reports from the ministry. For those of you who haven't had a chance to step through session 1 in the Practice Billing Series for Dummies, we invite you to register and watch that webinar through our website at www.drcare.ca/recording. Our first session for the series focused on how to read your Ministry RA summary versus our new Practice Care Executive RA dashboard. Okay, let's get started. I'm Maral Sanasian, the Senior Regional Director of Healthcare Consulting here at Dr. Care. As many of you know, at Dr. Care, we help primary care physicians enhance patient care, run better businesses, and improve their own quality of life. To date, we've helped over 1,200 family doctors improve the lives of more than 1.5 million patients through our suite of programs and services. Before we start with content, there are a few logistics I'd like to review with you. We are using the GoToWebinar platform for this webinar. All participants have been signed on in listen-only mode, but throughout the webinar, you are welcome to submit questions through the chat console. If you have logged into your computer to see the presentation on slide deck, you will notice the GoToWebinar console on the top right of your webinar screen. Through the chat feature, please feel free to type and submit your questions. We'll take questions at the end of this webinar. Your questions and your identity will only be seen by me. I'll read out your questions, but we'll keep all identities confidential. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be provided to all attendees for review and for sharing. During today's session, our goal will be to share knowledge that will help you optimize your practice. More specifically, we'll provide insights on how you can utilize Ministry Error Report data in a much more efficient way to ensure that you address errors as efficiently as possible, so that you're not leaving anything on the table when it comes to revenue. Just to put this into perspective on how important fixing billing errors is, at Dr. Care, we typically see that doctors are leaving behind $200 to $1,000 in rejected errors every single month. Here's our agenda for the day. First, we'll take a quick moment to review what primary care errors are. Second, we'll show you how to read a Ministry Error Report and how to contrast this to how it's reported in our Practice Care program. In this portion of the webinar, you'll get a lot of insights into our best practices, into the type of error data you should be compiling and reviewing regularly to ensure that you keep your errors to a minimum. Third, we'll step through 3 common errors and show you how to fix them. And lastly, we'll open up the session for any questions that you may have and a Q&A answer period at the end. But first, a quick background on Practice Care. At Dr. Care, we recently launched our new Practice Care program, our next generation program for primary care practice management. This replaces our former service that was called FoCare. Our new Practice Care program now features more analytics and new actionable insights to help you improve billing optimization, your roster management, your bonus optimization, and preventive care support. Practice Care goes beyond just handing you a report on a quarterly or monthly basis. Doctors are now part of an interactive, intuitive, and responsive program where Dr. Care is now helping you manage all aspects of your practice. We invite you to visit our website for more information about Practice Care at www.drcare.ca/pc. Let's dive into this session on rejected billings and reconciliations. Like the Ministry RA, you are all very familiar with, and painfully so, with the view that you are seeing right now. This is the Ministry Error Report that you receive and review 2 business days after each time you submit your billings to the ministry. Throughout this webinar, we'll be using this sample of a Ministry Error Report. Let's take a moment to do a very quick recap on the definition of an error for those of you who are new to primary care practice billing. Errors are rejected claims with the appropriate error codes for corrections. They can be claims that are not paid or paid in an amount that is not equal to the amount billed or paid as a different code and fee, which is an over or an underpayment. For the purpose of this webinar, we are going to focus on 3-digit errors. Again, for those new to primary care practice billing, here's a very quick recap on the definition of a 3-digit error. 3-digit alphanumeric error codes are the rejected claims with the appropriate error codes that are reported to you in the ministry's error report. These claims are deleted from the ministry system and must be corrected and resubmitted in order to be considered for payment. Here are the most common error codes that we see doctors experiencing throughout our decade of working with them. Later in this webinar, we'll focus on the 3 common errors highlighted on this slide, which is EH2, A2A, and PAA, and we'll show you how to fix them. But first, let's go back to discussing the ministry's error report. The ministry error report is a separate file from the RA, the remittance advice. Every time you submit your bills, the ministry will check if your scenario is valid, and if it is not, you'll get this error report, typically 2 business days later. Each time you get an error report, it's quite laborious to handle. You have to open it, you have to step through it, and try to decipher what all the text and the codes mean. It's similar to the ministry RA in format, being a text-only file and making it look very scrambled with text and numbers all over the place. And either you or one of your staff, who are all very busy with the actual running of the practice and taking care of patients, each time you get this report, you try to figure out where everything is on the file, what each error means, and then you try to fix the error lines item by line item. Some doctors prefer to do this every day or every other day, while others do this at week's end, at month's end, or have another cycle they prefer. So you are getting multiples of this report every time you submit. Maybe you get a handful of these reports a month if you submit weekly. If you submit more frequently than once a week, then you may be getting 6, 8, 10 or more reports monthly. Even if you only submit once a month, which we don't recommend as a best practice, and we'll explain why a little bit later in today's webinar, the one error report you do get may contain many, many, many lines of text for you to step through and address. And this is what you face with every report from the ministry. Firstly, you don't know how to read it, you don't understand it. Secondly, and even more important, there is an action required behind each of these errors. If you don't follow through on understanding and then acting on the information, then you lose out on the dollar amount for that claim. So how can you just fast track past reading and understanding and get to the part with enough actionable insights for you to simply fix the errors and go back to your day job, which is caring for patients? Now let's discuss the practice care program report section that is the star of this webinar, which is the new rejected billing and outstanding errors module. This is one of the 9 modules in our report. All the modules in the report are designed to help you more comprehensively address key areas of your FO practice in your FO billing. These modules contain analytics and actionable insights with new recommendations from Doctor Care. The rejected billing outstanding errors module is something that is completely new from Doctor Care for primary care practice management. It's 4 to 6 pages of critical billing error information for your practice. Why did we invest resources in this? The rejected billing outstanding errors module was developed to help doctors gain visibility into the total amount of outstanding revenue due to errors when billing for work that you've done. Many of our clients use various software to handle their errors, none of which are easy to use and clear. Our new report module is designed to provide clear and actionable insights to help doctors more efficiently recover the outstanding revenue. Simply put, it is the best way to read and fix your rejected errors. On the screen here, you are seeing the section of the Practice Care Program report that contains the rejected billing and outstanding errors module. Within these easy-to-read pages, it contains all your outstanding errors in one location rather than multiple text files from the ministry. And on top of that, the information is summarized and presented in dollar figures with real service dates, names and subtotals, and more, not just plain text line item by line item, as is the case with a single error report from the ministry. This module will help you on how much revenue is outstanding due to rejected billing. And it will help you easily monitor your errors to make sure that you and your staff are on top of your errors. We like to think of this error module in the report as your catch-all or as your safety net, because it makes sure that nothing slips through the cracks. You may have processes and approaches to correcting your errors, but what we have found over the years of directly working with more than 1,200 doctors is that a lot of the time there is something you are leaving on the table. And by that, we mean leaving money behind. With this report module, our goal is to make sure that you are not leaving any revenue on the table. So let's dive right in and step through how our practice care program report module for rejected billings and outstanding errors contrasts with the ministry error report. To the left, you see a standard ministry error report. This is all you get from the ministry on any rejected billings each time you submit. No summary information, no analysis, nor insights, just line item by line item of individual error codes. Let's contrast this to our report module on the right of your screen. At the top of our report module, you see immediately how much is outstanding due to rejected billing. This is the total revenue that you are missing out on. From here, you can then see the outstanding errors revenue amount by month. We order the errors chronologically from oldest at the top to newest at the bottom so that you can prioritize the older ones and address them more immediately before they become stale dated. Then you see the outstanding errors by error code. This is where you get a quick summary of the number of errors for each error code. Remember, if you only have the ministry files, you will need to compile these summary error reports manually yourself. And for the rest of our practice care program report module for rejected billing and outstanding errors, we provided the details of each code that is outstanding and grouped them by the error explanation so that it's more efficient for you to address each error. As you can see on your screen, we are very comprehensive in showing you all the errors that are outstanding. Now, let's show you how to read both reports. Like before, on the left is the ministry error report, and on the right is our practice care error report module. Let's go through an example of how to read a line of information on each report. We'll use error code EH2, which is new version code required, as our example. On the ministry report, here's where you find the error code. It's listed one at a time for each patient. See the purple areas on your screen. In contrast, we report all patients for that specific error code table. On the ministry report, here's where you find patient information, in the green box there. In contrast, here's where you see it on our report, in the corresponding green box. Back to the ministry report. Here's where you find the rejected service code, in the red box. And here's where it is on our report, in the corresponding red box. Same goes for the rejected service date and rejected amount submitted in the orange and the blue boxes. Notice that throughout the ministry report, everything is a bunch of codes strung together, while in our report, it's an easy-to-read table with headers and the information is laid out in its correct format with dates, dollar figures, or words. In addition, within our tables, we also rank the errors from oldest at the top to newest at the bottom. See the blue arrow on your screen. We want you to address the top lines immediately, since you only have 6 months since the billing service date to fix them. And we provide additional information such as patient's full name, whether a patient is currently rostered, and their version code. If none is listed, then you know that's the issue, and if a version code is listed, this means it is the wrong version. So we just went through the comparison for one error. You may be thinking, okay, I can totally do this. Now I understand how to break down and decipher the text on the ministry's error report. But let me ask you this question. Are you a busy person? If you answered yes, then imagine this scenario. If you submit your billings once a week, which is what we see the most often with the doctors that we work with, and you don't have time to address the ministry's error reports that come to you after each weekly submission, usually arriving 2 business days later, and you keep submitting your billings once a week, then after 2 months of the cycle, you'll have potentially 8 ministry error reports to slog through individually, and then fixing them one by one. And if you neglect your error reports for the maximum allowed 6 months, because let's be honest, you are busy taking care of patients as well as trying to maintain some semblance of a work-life balance, then you could potentially have 24 ministry error reports to slog through. The sheer volume of them becomes unmanageable with each report containing multiple lines of text and numbers like this. The bigger factor is that you have to keep track of them. Have you gone through each of them? Are they completed? Let's contrast this to our practice care program report. Each regular interval report you receive will report on the outstanding errors. In our practice care program, between our regular monthly or quarterly report to doctors, we reconcile your errors with the RA. And if they have been resubmitted and fixed, then we don't report on them in your next report from us. We only report on all outstanding errors. Okay, let's get to the next part of the webinar. Let's show you how to fix 3 common errors that we see day in, day out: EH2, PAA, and A2A. Let's start with the error code EH2, which means that a new version code is required. What is this code? EH2 is the most common error code that a physician receives. You receive this error when there is an issue with the version code billed with the claim. Typical scenarios are that a patient's health card has expired and the version code is invalid. You have a wrong or old version code that was submitted, or no version code was in the claim that was submitted. To the left, here's how you see an EH2 error code on a mystery report, there with the purple highlights. On the right is how it's represented within our practice care program report. We group by error codes as we find it much more efficient to do the same errors and fix them all in one shot than to fix error codes in a random order per patient like it's shown in the ministry error reports from top to bottom there. In order to correct an EH2 error, doctors typically have their front staff call the patient to get the updated version code. However, our main tip is to call the ministry. Yes, there is a ministry service for this, for the information, for the missing or wrong version code. It's significantly faster and more efficient than calling each patient one by one to get that updated information. The exact steps to carry out are laid out on this slide. Fixing this error becomes even more efficient if you have our practice care program report on outstanding errors, as we group errors by error code. This way, you can see all the outstanding errors for that code in a single table. So one call to the ministry for the missing version codes each month or quarter is way more efficient than calling each patient for an updated number, which could mean multiple phone calls to each patient if you can't reach them on the initial call. Let's move on to error code PAA. No initial fee previously paid. What is this code? PAA occurs with specific codes that have a precondition of a code billed and paid in the past. This commonly occurs for the smoking cessation counseling code K039 and add-on code 2042. There needs to be an E079 billed and paid in the past year. To the left, here's how you see a PAA error code on the ministry error report, where the purple highlights are. On the right is how it's represented within our report. All outstanding PAA errors are grouped together on one table and ordered from top to bottom from oldest to newest. To correct a PAA error, doctors typically keep resubmitting as is or they write them off. We have an easy solution for the common PAA smoking cessation issue so that you can get revenue for the work that you've done and the service that you've provided. The exact steps to carry out are laid out on this slide. Number 1, review the notes for that visit. Number 2, create a new claim with both E079A and an appropriate assessment or counseling code that's appropriate to the visit. Last but not least, number 3, submit the new invoice bills. Again, fixing this error becomes even more efficient if you have our Practice Care Program Report module on outstanding errors, as we group errors by error code. This way, you can see all the outstanding errors for that code in a single table, and you can go into each patient with a PAA and create a new claim. Let's move on to the third and last error code we will fix today, A2A. Patient is underage or overage for this service. What is this code? The A2A appears on the service code billed, has a patient age restriction, and the patient the code was billed on does not fit in the age restriction. This commonly happens with the periodic health visit code, the K017 for a child, the K130 for an adolescent, so they're between 16 and 17 years of age, K131, adults aged 18 to 64, and K132 for adults that are 65 and older. To the left there, here's how you can see the A2A error within the ministry report, highlighted in purple. On the right is how it's represented within our report, grouped together on one table for this error code. In order to correct an A2A error, it simply needs to be resubmitted with the right billing code. So if a K131 was billed on a patient who is 66 years old, you need to change the bill to K132 and resubmit it to the ministry. It's that simple. However, we have noticed that this code typically slips through the cracks, and many doctors forget to fix these errors, even though it's so easy and quick to fix. Again, it may be that the ministry error report is simply too hard to read and slog through, one file at a time, line item by line item. Whereas using our Practice Care Program Report module on outstanding errors, you can see all errors very easily in one table for this code. You can go to each of the patients with the A2A, check their age, and then rebill with the right service code. It's that easy. That concludes our step through of 3 very common error codes. Before we move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar, let's wrap up this section with our top 3 best practices for errors. To reduce the number of rejected claims, first, consider submitting your billings every day if you can, at least once a week. Don't leave submissions for once a month, as you may miss the cutoff if the ministry doesn't process it in time for the monthly 18th deadline. If that happens, then you aren't going to get paid for your billing. Also, by submitting more often, any errors from the ministry then come in smaller batches and sooner, which is more efficient for your staff to tackle. Second, increase the efficiency of error reconciliation by using the Practice Care Program Report from Dr. Care. When you get our Practice Care Report, address errors right away, within the week ideally. Get them completed before your next submission so that they are not accumulating over time. Third, have a good understanding of the billing code. Here are 2 useful links from the ministry to error codes and the OHIP bulletin. In summary, efficiently getting critical error information from a ministry error report means you are deciphering lines and lines and lines of plain text and code. And you may have to do this over multiple ministry error reports over weeks or months. Contrast this to our Practice Care Program Report module on errors. It's laid out in tables in the right format with actual patient names, dates, dollar figures, and is easy to scan and read. And it contains more than just the previous month's data. We even go back to the previous 5 months and previous fiscal periods to give you more insights into your practice's health. I hope this practice billing series for Dummies webinar on errors has been helpful in explaining the differences between your ministry error report and our Practice Care Program Report module on rejected billings and outstanding errors. This ends the education session of the webinar. Let's take some questions from the attendees. If you have logged into your computer to see the presentation on slide deck, you will notice a console on the top right of your webinar screen. There is a chat feature there. Please feel welcome to type and submit your questions. Your questions and your identity will only be seen by me. I'll read out your questions, but we'll keep all identities confidential. And while you are all submitting your questions to me, I'd like to extend this special offer to all of you, our webinar guests, to all the doctors and staff who have joined us today. We invite you to book a complimentary error code consult with us. In this consultation, we will review your last 5 months of errors with you and provide insights on how to address them. If you are interested, type your request through chat or feel free to email us at info@doctorcare.ca. Okay, I see a bunch of questions coming through, and I'm going to start working my way through them. So here's the first question that we've gotten. What is the best way to reduce the volume of EH2? That's a great question, because that is absolutely a very common rejection that we see within family physician practices. The best way is to get the health card validation configured on your EMR. It's now possible with every EMR to validate the card right at check-in. This avoids missing an opportunity to tell the patient to renew their health card with them in front of you and to have the claim rejected. Okay, here's another question that's come in. Here's a question. Is it even worth it to worry about errors since I'm in a FO, family health organization? Isn't it only a few dollars? That's a good question. But here's the thing, even though you are in a FO and you make most of your money from capitation and the shadow billing, let's face it, it's only for 15% of the code value that you're getting on enrolled patients, 15% is still something. As well, in the FO, you will also be billing fee-for-service on non-rostered patients and out-of-basket codes on your enrolled patients. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is you don't want your claims rejected and to not get paid for work that you have already done. So I have a question here about the after-hours premium. So the participant is asking, I'm not sure why I'm getting rejections on some of my after-hours premiums. This is actually more common than you would think. So there could be multiple issues with such a rejection when your 2012A gets rejected. In order for the after-hour premium to pay, it needs to go hand in hand with a specific list of codes. It doesn't go with every code that you could be billing. It also only applies to FO enrolled patients, so it will reject if the patient that you are seeing is not enrolled to you or your FO group. And last but not least, the visit needs to be either booked or the patient should have walked in after 5 p.m. on weekdays or on weekends for it to apply. Those are common rejections, reasons for rejections we see for the after-hours premium. And then last but not least, I'll take one more. So this has to do with the smoking cessation codes that we discussed earlier. Why did my smoking cessation follow-up code, the K039, reject, even though I had an initial smoking cessation visit completed? What often happens here is that you need to have an E079 initial smoking cessation visit billed within the previous 12 months for the K039A to pay. However, what we typically see when this rejection occurs is that your original E079 was billed, but it was not paid, which is why the ministry system rejects and bounces back the K039 follow-up visit. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for questions. So if we haven't addressed your question, we'll contact you directly with an answer. So you will hear from us. On behalf of the Doctor Care team, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. If you have any questions or have any feedback on the webinar, please feel welcome to contact me at any time. My email and phone number is listed on this slide, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.